Okay, so we are recording this meeting, which is going to be about the CARES and PPP programs. And I'm Lonnie Boyd. I'm from Wisconsin Lutheran College, for those of you that don't know me. And like I mentioned, let's just, as you raise your hand and give a comment, you don't have to do it every single time, but the first time that you do, say your name and the organization that you're from. So I'll open the floor up to whoever has the first question. Don't be shy. Come on, who's gonna be the brave person who starts the conversation? It's gonna be a long hour, folks, if nobody says anything. All right, I'm gonna pick on Diane then. Diane, you were the one who was like, let's have this conversation. So what's on your mind, Diane? Get us started.
Actually, I applied for the PPP just for salary because we don't really have utilities or rent, or we're just really fortunate in that respect. But I wasn't sure about CARES, about applying for that as well. And whoever I asked, our treasurer, who was all gung-ho about the PPP, never got back to me, and our board president is kind of leery about loans, and so I don't, should I be applying for, there's probably no money in CARES right now until they replenish it, but should that be something that I'm looking to apply for as well? The PPP already came through and the money's in our account, so we're fortunate that way. But aside from that, I don't know what else I should be doing or what everybody else is doing. Oh, Diane Veal, Lucille Tax Center for the Arts. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Diane.
Sorry, honeys.
It's a lot to remember on these calls. Does anybody have, feedback on what they've done and what they've seen and what they know? Or additional questions, because I obviously don't have any of the answers, but we can all collectively try to find the answers to questions that remain unanswered after this discussion. Yes.
Hi everybody, I'm Sandra Walling. I'm Visual Arts Coordinator at the Sharon Lynn Wilson Center for the Arts. I started that role in October. Recently, I have also been given the role as grants coordinator, and that's something I'm new at. I did gather some information for the payroll protection program. We were originally looking at any type of SBA type loans, so I've been learning a ton in the last 3 or 4 weeks. Right now, I've been charged with helping us apply for the CARES Act. And that is also, I'm kind of feeling a little bit better because it seems like everybody's trying to learn this or in the same boat. So I can tell you, I'll be vulnerable, I'll let you know where I'm at. One of the things I was trying to figure out is in reading that I think we need to be registered with SAM in order to apply for the grants.gov CARES Act. I know there's part 1 and part 2. That's very confusing. Part 1 looks pretty easy. It's just a simple PDF to fill out. But I was really confused as to whether we needed to also register that in SAM before we do grants.gov. So that's
Sandra, Karen has something to say, and she is probably the most knowledgeable one here in the room. So go, Karen.
Okay, thank you.
I am sorry, I was having some technical challenges. I think I'm good. And hopefully you guys can hear me, and I'm not going to freeze all the time. But the money that you're applying for at Sharon Lynn, that's just only people who have received NEA grants over the last 4 years can apply to that. So, and no, you don't have to re-register with SAM for this particular grant. You're good.
Thank you.
So, yeah, and just stay tuned. We will, as soon as our board gives us thumbs up, we will let you know what the CARES Act money looks like from us. And if you have applied to us in the last, I think it's 3 years, you can receive funding through that program, or at least you're eligible to apply for that funding. We're not saying anything to the world about this, so don't, I mean, we'll get the stuff out hopefully today. But right now, just know that even though you guys, I don't know how many of you at all will be able to apply directly to the NEA for their CARES funding. I think you're all eligible to apply. Almost all of you are eligible to apply to us for that funding.
Cool. Thanks, Karen. Mary had her hand, and then I think I saw Sandy had a hand. Go ahead, Mary.
I probably have more questions than answers also. We did also apply for the PPP and get it. I still feel like in there, yeah, I was super duper happy because we had laid people off, and as of today, we have now brought them all back to work at home. One thing that was interesting with that, and I'm wondering if others who applied interpreted it the same way, is that you have to maintain your level of payroll, and there's still confusion on whether that's the number of full-time people, the number of people, the number of FTEs, and you have to use 75% of the award on payroll, which meant that we literally brought everyone back on payroll, even our part-time people, people who definitely cannot do their job from home, but in order to meet the conditions of that program, we literally brought everyone back. And I'm just curious if other people interpreted that same way or had any clarification on the number of full-time people versus FTEs or whatever else.
Sandy?
Hi, everybody. Sandy Madden with the Campanile Center for the Arts in Monaco. I just spoke to our bookkeeper yesterday because we got PPP. You just have to maintain the same number of people. And as she explained it to me, because she's looking across a broad spectrum of businesses, so it's not just nonprofits, it's for-profits, it's anybody up here in the North Woods they're dealing with that got the PPP. My concern was we had an extraordinarily large payroll last year, which was a blip on the radar. And so by going with the 2.5 times what my payroll was for last year, I was getting way more money than what my current payroll situation looks like. But I was encouraged to apply for that amount. Well, you have to apply for that amount with the full payroll. And so what she said we could do is actually pay people for any amount of time we wanted to. In other words, I could pay them over the next 8 weeks for a time period being 12 weeks in length. So in theory, their average salary would be a 4-month period, but it would be paid over the 8 weeks as required by the PPP. She also said some employers were actually giving out bonuses to their employee to be able to meet that 75% payout threshold. So the good news is the rules are not clear. And because the rules weren't clear and the guidance wasn't given at the front end, there's not really a way for them to police other than the actual payroll records that you produce. That's what I know.
Thanks, Sandy. That's very helpful. Tony, go ahead. Oh, you're still muted, Tony.
Okay,
There you go.
so we also applied and got the PPP, which I just turned in yesterday to the bank. Very excited about that. And we are qualified to apply for the CARES money through the NEA. And so I did the step 1 and I'm working on the part 2. But I'm wondering, this is kind of a question maybe for Karen also. So if we get funding, if we get the grant from the NEA, can we also apply to the Wisconsin Arts Board for that portion of the CARES Act funding?
So the board hasn't weighed in on that one yet. I will tell you that the NEA funds are 50,000 flat, and our grants are going to be way less than that. So I have a guess as to what the board's going to say, but I can't tell you right now.
Yeah. Okay. Do you think that's going to be super competitive, Karen?
Yep.
Pardon?
Yeah.
Thanks. Tony, are you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Sandra?
So I wanted to confirm that the NEA is 50,000 flat. So when you fill in, it needs to equal 50,000 at the bottom, right? When you fill it in. Does anybody know that? No? Okay. But I think that does answer my question, Karen, that you wouldn't be asking for 42,700. They're giving out
No.
50,000.
I don't think you're asking for anything, are you? Are you just sort of reporting what your situation is? Or are you
Well,
actually asking?
In part two, and
You know what, actually, Sandra, just because this isn't relevant to most people on the call, why don't we chat after the main call is over on that,
okay. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
And Sandy, if you want to stay on that one, that would be helpful too, maybe. All right.
Thanks. What other questions or experiences do people have that they want to share? Mary?
You can always count on me to fill a talking void, Lonnie. I guess I'm just curious as to any other resources people have found or even tried to apply for. I mean, we did the PPP. We did not apply for the other SBA small business stuff. I don't know if you even can once you have PPP. Mainly because we really don't want another loan per se and another payment when we come out of this. So I'm wondering if there are other more grant type opportunities that people have found or even applied for or think we all might be eligible for.
Mary, are you looking at all on our website? I would direct you to ours because we're trying to keep up all of the grants available to arts groups there. And I know that Americans for the Arts, with vastly more staff, are able to give their website, their resource website, many updates during the day as things come available. So I would direct you to those two, and I will type those in the chat box during this meeting. So, because I'm not coming up with it right now. I have so many tabs open.
Thanks.
Great, thank you, Karen.
Sure.
Josiah?
So I don't know, Karen, if you can answer this one, but can you still apply for the PPP? Because those, two businesses are giving back, tens of millions of dollars? So can we still apply?
Ooh, that's
for
an
that,
interesting
or no?
question.
I think it was
hang
like
on.
the Shake Shack was gonna give like a lot of their money back, just because their income was so big last year that they're like, okay, we don't need this now, type of thing. So I was just curious if we can still apply for it. So I have an answer to give to my board.
So this is what I know about that. Very little, but I do know that Shira Apple, who is our Wisconsin SBA guru and works for the SBA and did a session with us last week, would be an awesome person to talk to about that. So I will delay finding those links and instead go to my email and get her email in the chat box so you can find out. Ask her directly, provided my system doesn't freeze. There it did. Oh well. Lonnie, don't end this call for a little bit. I'm trying to get all this
That's
stuff
fine.
from my frozen system into the chat box.
Otherwise, Karen, if it's easier just to put it in an email and send it to me, then I can add it to the notes afterwards as well. The chat will record as just a text transcript, so I can easily cut and paste it in there. So if it's easier to just make notes to yourself and then after the call is over, just email it all to me, that's fine too. Whatever works easier for you.
Thank you. Thank you. I love options. Okay. Here, I just got it. It just unfroze. So here's Shira's.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, thanks. Okay.
Any other questions? Otherwise, if not, I will ask the one that I had asked at the beginning before we started the meeting. I know, and Karen, I'm sorry, everything's probably directed at you. But
Okay, I'm glad I could be here.
I know there's just a few of us that are connected with schools on this call, but in case others, listen to the recording, I'm assuming, and I don't want to wrongly assume, that since my institution, Wisconsin Lutheran College, applied for the PPP, that I would not necessarily be doing a separate application as an arts organization, since that's my organization. Is that the correct assumption?
So I will tell you actually that I froze while you said that, and so I didn't hear anything but blurry sounds. Could you repeat it, please?
Sure.
Sorry.
So being part of a college, and I'm not sure high schools as well, maybe we all group us in together, that I know that college applied for the PPP. So I'm assuming, and like I was saying, I don't want to wrongly assume, so this is more of a clarification, that I would not as an arts organization apply separately because Wisconsin Lutheran College is my organization. Is that the correct?
That's my understanding,
Okay.
right? Yeah,
And I did it
programs within larger institutions are still part of that larger institution. One would assume that Wisconsin Lutheran College would have included you in their application.
Correct, right.
Okay.
And then I'm sure that it was, because I am an employee of the college, which I know is possibly different. I don't know, Josiah, how your your relationship with the school works. So I don't know, like, if you would have been included with like the school's application, or so you would be separate in your case, right?
I would be totally separate because my salary doesn't come from the school district, which for another point sucks, but I don't get that opportunity. So for us, I'd have to do it, the back way, in a sense, like what everyone else is kind of doing right now. I think my dad would be different because I think Edgerton then would apply for it, and then if they had to, then my dad would be taken care of, but I don't know about that.
I don't think school districts can apply, can they?
I don't think they can, being a government entity.
Right.
I'm assuming that.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we're all getting paid. Our board voted to pay us all, if they, even if they stay home. But of course, they're doing online learning for the teachers involved with the schools, with the students. Myself, I'm here. I'm kind of considered essential because I'm in facilities. So I've been going back and forth. I had the first 4 days off, worked at home, and then I took spring break off, and then I've been back full time, pretty much just doing projects around and planning next season and all. So, and canceling concerts. So it's been fun. We have a $40 million referendum finished, and so the contractors are here building, and they're all excited because they're just taking over the whole building's work. So it's been kind of nice, quiet time.
Thanks, Paul. Who else? Diane?
So am I don't want to say assuming, am I correctly understanding that the CARES Act, aside from the PPP, the CARES Act is a loan that needs to be paid back if you were to get to qualify for one. Is that correct?
The CARES Act covers a lot of stuff. It includes the money that went to the NEA that is being filtered to the states. It includes a lot of stuff. Is there a particular part of the CARES Act fund that you're thinking of, Diane?
I think the small business sorts, the
SBA stuff?
I guess so, yeah. And so that would all be in the form of a loan if you were to qualify.
So there are two areas, right? The PPP and the EIDL?
Yeah,
Emergency
EIDL.
disaster.
Mhm.
Yeah. And we just did a webinar on this last week. And as far as I know, it's irrelevant because they're all out of money, period. But I'm blanking on the answer to that question, other than I think that it's irrelevant at this point.
Did other people do it?
EIDLs?
EIDL. Mm-hmm.
Do you know, actually, rather than have me guess, and I'd be interested in what everybody else has to say on that one on the call here, just send Shira a note, Diane.
Oh, okay.
Just ask her about that.
Okay.
She's kind of your one-stop shop. She's awesome.
Okay.
And she's the person who's going to know first,
Okay.
I think.
Thank you.
Stuff. Yep. I didn't mean to squelch anybody else who wanted to jump in there and say whether they applied to EIDL, though.
We chose to do payroll protection and did not go the EIDL route. So.
Tony?
Yeah, we applied for both, but the EIDL was out of funding. But there was $10,000 of the EIDL that is a grant, it's forgiven, but then they changed it to $1,000 per employee would be forgiven. But as Karen mentioned, it's kind of moot because they are out of money. But I still get emails from them occasionally that say basically nothing.
Thanks, Tony. Mary? Oh, Mary, you're still on mute.
There we go. I had the same impression that the PPP started as a loan, but if you met all the criteria, it's basically forgiven like a grant, and that the SBA stuff was a loan, just a loan other than what was originally that $10,000 that you could get up front that was forgiven. We did not apply for that because it was a loan. I wasn't aware of the change in how they calculate the forgiven part, which is interesting because even with the PPP, maintaining your number of employees, we have so many very, very part-time employees like bartenders and dance teachers and music teachers and house managers, that while our FTEs are not very high, our actual number of heads is quite high. So if they did put more into that funding, we might consider the loan part if they reopen that at some point. But for now, we just did the PPP.
I'm going to break in and, speaking of forgiveness, ask yours, because I actually need to get on the APAP call about streaming content. So I'm going to look at that one now and wish you all well. So I know we were just going to talk about the NEA thing. If you have questions, why don't you email me and we'll try to figure it out that way. Today is a day of webinars.
Thank you, Karen.
Right.
Thanks for joining
Hang in
us.
there, everybody. It's good to see your faces. Bye.
Bye. All right, so our resident expert has left. Now what do we do?
Well, I just want to say it was nice to see all your faces. I was particularly seeking some help and advice on the NEA, which is what I'm working on right now. So, but maybe I'll see you all again sometime soon.
All right, thanks, Sandra, for joining.
Yeah, thank you.
And then there were 12. We have actually a nice little Brady Bunch box though now, so if nothing else, we can sing the song. I can't wait until people you know, watch this recording expecting to get this like wonderful, wonderful knowledge mountain, and it's just us, and you're going, oh. What else? What else do you guys need to talk about or want to talk about? Otherwise, if we've kind of wrapped it up, we can certainly, we don't have to go an hour. You know, it can be a short little discussion as just a check-in if everybody feels happy with what they've found out or whatever. Go ahead, Josiah.
I'm just curious, Tim, did the Overture Center apply for any of this stuff?
Oh yeah,
Or
we got
did you guys
we got the PPP. Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you
Yeah,
guys did or
yeah.
not.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Yeah.
So Josiah, you said you haven't applied for PPP? Okay.
No.
Diana was saying Carthage didn't apply for anything, right? As far as you know.
I don't know. They have not released that information. We did have to, there's other things for insurance purposes and grants. So we had to give in a full report of how many hours we had to work due to COVID-19. So even if it's already work that I do, we had to put in those hours of exactly. And then I also had to do what we saved for not programming and what we lost in programming. So we had to report all of that 2 weeks ago. We had a pretty tight deadline. So I don't know what grants, what insurance money, what they're applying for. They're kind of keeping those things quiet. I've submitted different sites that I get to the provost just in case it slips through the cracks, but I know they're working 24/7 on all this stuff right now.
Mm-hmm.
The only information that we got was yesterday is just because you're hearing it in the news right now that institutions are looking at furloughs. They're looking at ways to, I mean, there's being cuts across the board between 10 and 30% for institutions. So what do they do? How long are they going to project these cuts? Because we have to make up for a lot of the housing. What can we close down? And the big conversation right now is, do we open in the fall? And when can we make that decision? Because we don't want to make everything last minute, even though we're going to have to. And the other concern is, even though we're doing a lot of virtual tours for incoming students or potential students, not just for fall, but the following year, are they going to be able to come to college because of all the financial hits that their families are having? Do we drop our sticker price? Do we give out more scholarships? So there's just a lot that's happening at this point of a lot of unknowns, but we're just kind of doing our day-to-day until we get told.
Thanks. That's a nice update. Yeah, I know it's one of those things. I think every institution is individualized and different depending on your current situation. Which will be, for those of you that can join us on Thursday for the discussion, I think that's going to be one where we're going to talk about all this stuff. Will we reopen in the fall? When we do, how do we socially distance? You know, I mean, it's going to be a lot of questions and a lot of speculation, but I think that'll be a good discussion. So I'll try not to go into it yet. I'm eager to talk about that one. Anything else from anybody? Going once?
One little quick question. Where did you guys apply to your funds that you got them? I worked through my banker and he hit me up on Friday saying that we didn't get our PPP funding. So where did you guys apply to get your PPP funding?
Ours was
Good
Park
question.
Bank.
What was it, Tim?
Park Bank.
Yeah, we just went through our local bank that we normally work with. And it is a very small local bank. I did hear people had more trouble if they were going through very large, bank, the bigger national ones or whatever. We just went through our local. Fortunately, I know the guy there well, and he supports us well, and I do think that may have had something to do with it.
We went through our local bank to another small one, and we're fairly well known with them. So
We also went through our regular bank. It happens to be a small local bank.
Thank you.
were right.
Very helpful.
You were right though. There were a lot of issues out there across the entire country with the large banks. I know many organizations that got their stuff in on time on that date, but the bank never got to it. So we're all fortunate to have these smaller banks in our communities, because that's what really happened out there, everybody.
Thank you. That's
yeah.
helpful.
Our banker was working nights and weekends. He actually notified me last Sunday night that we had been approved on Saturday. So it's like,
Wow. Wow. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Lonnie, for organizing
Yep,
this.
thank you very much. It was
Cool,
nice to
yeah.
see everybody.
You're amazing.
All right, sounds good. Let me stop recording. If nobody else, I'll say it again, going once, going twice. Okay.